Today, buying people's previously worn clothes is popular. Like, big time popular. In 2023, the value of the global secondhand apparel market was $211 billion and is expected to reach $351 billion by 2027. But in a world with just too many clothes piling up in landfills, will thrifting actually be the answer to our fast fashion problems? Okay, so first off the top here, I gotta say that we're thrifting advocates here at Future Proof. I personally think that the culture of people finding value in older items is fantastic, and we've advocated for you to try and thrift more in your life, to shop better, save money, and reduce your impact on the planet. But it is not without its issues. See, not so long ago, thrifting held a lot of stigma, but today the used clothes industry is booming, with companies scrambling to join in the race. We talked about the problematic business of chain thrift stores in a previous video, which kind of outlines the manipulative and misleading marketing tactics of stores like Value Village and Savers. And we also covered the opposite extreme with the rise of digital marketplaces like Depop and Facebook Marketplace. But while those videos were pretty well entirely about the business side of the thrifting movement, in this video we wanted to talk about what is driving this thrifting trend and what it might mean for our consumerism in the future. Because according to the ThredUp's 2023 annual resale report, 83% of Gen Z consumers have shopped or are willing to shop for secondhand apparel, and that number is only going up. But sadly, this is not going to be our silver bullet solution to our clothing addiction. One thing I learned in the making of this video is that thrifting correlates with some pretty interesting and dramatic times in human history. When people are dressing this way, it usually means the shit is going down. Thrifting first gained popularity in the 70s. Think hippies, think baby boomers when they were cool. It was a time when youth culture was on the rise and the need to express individuality was high. It was also the rise of anti-culture. This was a time of social and cultural change due to changing population demographics, because in the 1960s, 36% of the US population was under the age of 18. It was a time when fashion reflected the youth, and they were dealing with some pretty hectic shit. The 60s saw the introduction of birth control and sexual liberation, and the implementation of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, the Vietnam and Korean Wars, and the Cold War. It was a time of massive changes. Does that remind you at all of any particular times recently? Maybe some unprecedented things going on? People started dressing in a completely new way that has since been classified as bohemian. This was a rejection of mass production and consumerism as ecological sensibilities were on the rise. You had a massive amount of young people who were breaking from tradition and responding to the social and political climate around them through their actions and politics, but also through their fashion. Buying used clothing was seen as countercultural and subversive, and in some ways, that's what's happening today, but with some pretty big caveats that we're gonna get into later. Because as you may know, the hippie era did not last forever. Capitalism did what capitalism always does and rolled hippie clothes into the mainstream. Bohemian-looking clothes were being mass-produced and became the very thing that the original movement stood against. 20 years later, we saw the attitudes of anti-culture again in the 90s with the rise of the grunge movement, famously embodied by Nirvana and Kurt Cobain.
I look back on going to secondhand stores and stuff like that and finding a little treasure like that. And that actually meant more to me because it was more of a stab in the dark.
This was also a time of surging student interest in influencing social values, changing political structures, and a decline in excessive materialism that had been dominant in the previous decade. And could that paragraph not basically perfectly summarize what is going on in our world today? See, thrifting has come to represent more than just a good deal. It represents freedom, individuality, connection to the past and present, and commentary on the establishment and society in general. But things are a bit different in this latest iteration of thrifting than the trends of the past in some pretty key ways. So just like the generations of thrifters before them, Gen Z and millennials learned about the environmental and social impacts of the fashion industry and decided that they wanted to make a difference. But this time, they're using the internet. The normal 20-year cycle that has historically dictated what is happening and what is in style is collapsing around us with the rise of the internet. And that means that right now, basically any style is in fashion all the time. We made a whole video about trends and how they are changing in our modern world, so if you are interested in that, definitely check out that video after this one comes out. And if you like this kind of content, maybe consider subscribing to the channel or even supporting us over on Patreon. You get some bonus content and early access to videos, and I will love you forever. See, in this new speed-centric fashion world, thrifting has become uniquely popular in a way that has never before. Thrift stores and consignment shops have increased in popularity so much that more stores are opening to meet the demand. Goodwill alone is set to open 40 more stores across Canada in the next 5 years. Online platforms like ThredUp, Depop, and Facebook Marketplace make it easier than ever to thrift, and then social media just expands the breadth of the fashion that you can find secondhand. Your old clothes being sold to other people is estimated to be worth $80 billion by 2029. Thrifting has this very unique hold on internet culture today. We have thrift haul videos online where people show off their thrift finds to their followers, usually accompanied by a try-on video of some sort. This sort of treasure hunting process makes it a game of finding gems amongst the rubble, but it also is a completely exclusive shopping experience for all demographics. Anyone can enjoy the process of looking through a bunch of old stuff to find something that uniquely fits them. Today we have massive influencers like Emma Chamberlain, who's living a totally luxurious life, creating content about thrifting, proving that this formerly taboo thing is no longer a condition of economic circumstance, but instead a trend to take part in.
That is so fetch.
While the internet does a pretty good job of magnifying issues and movements, it tends to dilute them. And while thrifting is supposed to be this rejection of the norm and a way to save the planet, its popularity is getting in the way. Now, if you've seen our previous videos about thrift stores, or you know anything about modern consumerism, thrifting's recent popularity is changing the practice in some pretty typical ways. And yes, we're talking about the G word, grandpas. Grandpa's clothing is what you're buying when you go to the thrift store. Oh, no, wait, we're talking about gentrification. Yeah, it's less fun, that one. So there is a spectrum of thrift stores in the world, right? We have thrift stores that are very luxurious and specialize in hyper-specific brands and whatnot, and then we have others that are basically like a donation center. But across the board, we're seeing prices go up. One side is just functional costs. More interest in secondhand shopping means more staff and more resources to sort out all the items and house the donations, etc. This in turn drives up the prices, which severely impacts the lower income shoppers who needed to shop at secondhand stores in the first place. Thrifting used to be a treasure trove of goodies, an opportunity to find the perfect 70s top or genuine leather shoes made in Italy. But with the increased presence of fast fashion, these poorly made pieces are flooding thrift stores, making it hard to find anything that's actually worth buying. Also, many people believe that the prices at these stores are becoming purely inflated because they can, because they know that a lot of high-income people are coming in to purchase stuff because thrifting is cool now. So we're seeing literal dollar store items marked up from their original items in thrift stores because these stores want to make a profit. And ultimately, the responsibility to ensure that low-income individuals can access affordable clothing secondhand still falls on these companies. And it's a real shame to see this happening. So basically, the thrifting of today is just a normalized, capitalized, and gentrified version of the thrifting trends of the past. But there is a silver lining to this story that we had to include here just so you don't get so depressed that you click away or unsubscribe from the channel. See, as we know historically, thrifting re-enters the mainstream at times of tension. If you look around, we're dealing with the lingering effects of a lot of crazy shit. A pandemic, an impending recession, a climate crisis that we for some reason can't do anything about. And all of these pressures have made thrifting an attractive option for folks looking to adapt to this landscape around us. And at the end of the day, it is still the most environmentally friendly option for you to go out and get yourself a new look. And the internet's ability to blend and mix and match trends from the past also works to thrifting's advantage. What might be fashionable to one demographic might not be to another. But right now, everything and anything can be rocked at the same time. And that means a lot more used clothes can be used again. And yes, thrifting entering the mainstream makes it harder to find that special one-of-a-kind piece, but it also puts pressure on the fashion industry, forcing it to follow suit as it becomes clear that thrifting is here to stay. According to Sam Blumenthal, consumer communications for ThredUp, a lot of brands believe that sustainability is important, and resale is becoming a key part of their strategy to get there. Some of it is altruistic, and some of it is because they're going where the consumer is going. Now, of course, listen, this is a guy who represents a company that benefits greatly from people selling their clothes, but it is very intriguing to hear this. The hope here is that as the fashion world evolves, reselling and reusing clothing becomes a part of the design process. According to the Real Reels 2023 Luxury Consignment Report, Gen Z resells more than any other demographic. Point blank. And what this means is a modern and informed shopper might understand that buying a more expensive, higher quality piece of clothing from a reputable company will be able to be resold down the road, making the cost more justifiable for many shoppers. This is like buying a cheap car that's gonna fall apart versus paying a little bit more money to get a Toyota that is more reliable and ultimately will be sold for more money down the line. And while this might seem small, this could have real impacts on how manufacturers move into the future. Low quality items don't make it beyond a single wear most times, so reselling is rarely an option. And so the value of that item is no longer solely placed on its ability to be fashionable or functional for a moment, but for years and years down the road. That's why the brands and items with actual design and build quality in mind are the ones that are benefiting the most from this reselling world. We have already seen high-end brands launching resale programs for old pieces because of this new market demand. Patagonia was the first with their Worn Wear program, and the North Face and others have already followed suit. There could be a future where thrifting is just a natural part of the clothing market, where the bulk of clothing purchases are made. In a dream world, this is actually how circularity works, where items are exchanged amongst people back and forth when they are needed rather than purchased once for an event or season and then just discarded after. Imagine the wedding dress that you bought for that one summer event, or that suit jacket that you don't fit anymore, being able to be repurposed or resold to somebody else who needs it seamlessly without the hassle of having to figure out how you're gonna do it. There is so many cool things happening in this space. If you have any companies or resources that people can use to learn more about this, please leave them down in the comments below or on our subreddit. And if you like what you see here and you wanna see more, make sure you're subscribed and you'll see a new video every single week.